All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we have an awesome guest for you guys. He owns the Specific Chiropractic Centers in Elk Grove, California. He is one of the most friendly docs that you will ever meet. And also he has a super cool collection of authentic historical chiropractic philosophy items. So let me introduce to you Dr. Bryan Wright. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Let's just hop right into the questions. So
Cool.
first of all, tell everyone where you went to school and when you graduated.
Yes. I don't know if you can see it's probably written in backwards. That's Logan. Yeah, Dr. Bryan Wright or Bryan Wright from Missouri, St. Louis area region. That's where I'm from. I graduated Logan College of Chiropractic. At the time, it was Logan College of Chiropractic. And yeah, April 17th of
Wow.
1999.
That's
April
awesome.
1999.
So yeah, you went to Logan. Where is that located again?
So good question. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
Mhm.
That's where my field doc went. And the actual school, the school campus, I think one of the most beautiful chiropractic college
Mhm.
campuses in the country. It's in a place called Chesterfield, Missouri.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's kind of like a mid upper class suburbs outside of St. Louis. It's really nice.
That's so
Over like
cool.
100 something plus acre lot land. It's
Wow.
unreal.
That's
Yeah, it's
awesome.
unreal.
So what did you do after you graduated? Like, did you open up a practice? Did you associate? What did you do?
Yeah, so I was really young, going through school. I think I was like, when I finally got graduated, I think I was like 24, 25,
No.
probably like a lot of students are nowadays, in that
Mm-hmm.
young, maybe 20, mid 20s to late 20s range. So I had no business experience whatsoever as far as opening up my own business. Um, but I knew I wanted to get out of the Missouri area. I was so burnt out. I was so
Hmm.
burnt out, because I hit school like undergrad, and it was like, just year after year, summer after summer. So by the time I was done, especially just with the drama at Logan,
Hmm.
um, I was like, I got to get out of here. I was like going stir crazy. And at Logan, we were not introduced to upper cervical until I was about ready to be done and graduated.
Hmm.
They offered a Palmer toggle elective. I think it was my last maybe trimester at Logan,
Oh, wow.
because so many students were leaving. A lot of students were just leaving. They're like, hey, we're out of here if we're not going to get upper cervical.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, okay, we'll have a Palmer guy come down, or a Palmer doctor that came down and taught an elective. Um, but I got introduced to knee, chest, upper cervical early on, around trimester 2, trimester 3. And I just started going to modules and learning more about it. And so when I graduated, I was like, well, I wanted to basically get into a practice that was already doing the specific technique.
Hmm.
And so at the time, I knew of 3 practices. One was in New Orleans area. Another Dr. Sean Dill, he was already in Costa Rica
Hmm.
at the time. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go down there. I did do a chiropractic outreach trip in Costa Rica
Mm.
in 2001 when he was already down there. And then another doc I knew, he was outside of Boston, and he had been open about 3 years doing knee, chest, and upper cervical specific. And I was like, well, all these guys I knew personally, so they were like, yeah, come on out. They really opened up their
Hmm.
doors. They're like, yeah, come on out in my practice. So yeah, I chose Boston. So for me, it was,
Nice.
yeah, a couple things: get out of St. Louis, and then also get into a practice where I can start working.
Nice. I love that.
Mhm.
So you're talking about how you really wanted to do knee chest. What was it that made you gravitate towards that versus like full spine or other techniques?
Yay, good question. So these are 2 of my original ones. No, and these are
Mhm.
also my favorites too. But no, so a little bit of backstory. So I got into chiropractic care. I had a couple car accidents when I was
Mhm.
younger, 16, 17. Headaches, back pain, migraine headaches, all cleared up with general chiropractic. And I was like, man, to me, that just it changed my life. It amazed
Mhm.
me. I'm like, well, that's cool. Nobody else could help me besides this non-drug procedure, right?
Right.
The place I went to was not an upper cervical. They were general chiropractic, and they were like a big personal injury practice. They just
Mm.
saw tons of people. The doctor came in, did manual adjust, but then somebody came in and put me on all kinds of therapies.
Mm, yeah.
But my headache stopped. So that was enough to change my life. And I was like, wow, I'm doing this. And plus, I was looking for something to do in my life.
Mhm.
And then backing up too, I like you asking me these questions. Not that I'm not really that important, but I hope that by telling my stories, and that's why I like to come back to Life West, by telling my stories, you guys as students should be now formulating your own story, how you can repeat it over and over again, you know?
Totally.
So I think that, listen to me, that's fine, but you got to have your own why of why you chose chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it wasn't a personal story for you, but maybe it was a family member, maybe it was a spouse that you saw, maybe it was a mom or dad.
Mm-hmm.
But get that story locked in, because that way when you get done, you could just tell people, why you're doing what you do. So
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense, because I don't
Yeah.
think I'm that important, but my story is my story, and
Mm-hmm.
um, it was enough to push me through undergrad. I was like, okay, I'm going to become a chiropractor, and so I got in Logan, and then it's to me, I was like, yeah, 19, 20 years old, starting school, real young, and that's my client coming in. He's restroom, but so I was like locked in. Trimester one, I was so nervous. I'm like, well, I make sure I did not want to fail. So I
Mm-hmm.
hunkered down, studied, got through gross anatomy. I'm like, okay, I can do this. So then trimester two, because at Logan we have trimesters, and again, just hunkering down these hard courses. And then so I got through that, and then I started like looking around. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Okay, since I'm committing this time and money into a profession, I better figure out what the heck chiropractic is, because I really
Mm-hmm.
had no idea. I know it helped me, but how am I going to make a living out of this for the rest of my life? And am I going to be happy with it? Right.
Right.
So I started looking at students that were about ready to graduate, and they were like just nervous and not knowing where they're going to practice, not knowing what they're going to do, maybe second guessing why they went to chiropractic school to
Mm.
begin with. So I was like, so then I kind of pumped the brakes. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I'm making a wrong choice. So that's my thought process. And then I had a couple of guys that were a little bit older than me, that were at the time. Logan College did have a fraternity there, the Delta Sigma Chi chapter,
Oh, cool.
and I will say Logan is more. At least when I went there, it was not philosophically based, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too medical. I would say it's more middle of the road teaching
Right.
wise. But there was a lot of professors that bashed Palmer and Green Books and philosophy and NA. We had one great philosophy 1 and 2 teacher, but that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so then I saw these guys just excited reading Green Books. I don't even know what Green Books were at the time, but they just seemed like they were excited. I don't know if they were faking or what, but they just were always hanging out, running around. And I was like, and I knew one of them, and I'm like, wait a minute. So what sets them apart than the whole school?
Right.
And so I just started hanging out with them. I went to lunch, and I was like, if anything, they're like, hey, we know we're going to go to practice. We know which state we're going to go to. I was like, okay, well, at least they got their shit together. Excuse my language.
Mm-hmm.
But because my thing is like, look, this isn't like high school. This isn't like undergrad. This isn't like community college. This is like, okay, a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
and this is your careers. And I just saw students just messing around, like they were playing around, like it was like high school again. That was just weird. It was just really weird. And then, too, you probably saw people that have had years of other careers that
Yeah.
started over in life. You might have some. So to me, I was like, man, that's amazing that somebody just wants
Mm-hmm.
to do something different. So yeah, so then I made a choice. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to quit school. I want what these guys are doing. So then I pledged this chapter. It was in between trimesters, about five,
Mm-hmm.
6 week pledge process at the time. And then yeah, so then once I get in, that's it. I just started diving into Green Books, and then
Nice.
and then then you read like BJ's. You read his whole progression from early days to like his whole basically mid part of his books were all just upper cervical, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And then the brothers were like, hey, we're going to fly out to California to start learning this procedure. At the time, it was Dr. Tuscarino Amalu. And those are the guys that developed this infrared with Roger Titone at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Amalu and Tuscarino broke off from Kale, but that's a whole different story. But they
Yeah.
broke off with Kale. And Kale's the one that's Kale, if it wasn't for Dr. Kale, this procedure would not have survived.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think I've ever been on a plane before, but yeah, I started flying out to California, and we started doing modules, and I was in, trimester 3 and trimester 4. So that's when I got introduced to knee chest. And that's the only upper cervical procedure I got introduced to.
Mm-hmm.
If I would have got introduced to maybe Blair or something else, I might have done that. Cause to me, it just makes sense. At least there's a protocol and it's logical.
Yeah, it's like when you start reading those green books and reading what he's saying, it's really hard to ignore it and pretend that he didn't say what he said. So yeah, once you start getting into the philosophy, you're like, oh shoot, like he's talking so much about upper cervical, like this must be
Mhm.
super important.
But also what he said, but also what he what he researched. And it's like,
Hmm.
that's what was cool about, I think, with BJ is like, yeah, he was a philosopher, but he was an artist, with his art and his procedure, and also he was a scientist. And
Hmm.
I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, you're telling me he did all this research back in the 30s to 50s of only this procedure, and before that, he basically manipulated everything under the sun
Right.
and did everything. I'm like, so then maybe we should pick up where he kind of left off,
Yeah.
and that's what kind of that was like. And to me, I think, I'm more logical thinking anyways. I
Hmm.
like a blueprint. I'm a Virgo, so maybe that's why too. But I was like, okay, there's an instrument tells me when to adjust,
Hmm.
not where, but when. I can do a proper exam. There's X-rays that show me where to adjust.
Hmm.
To me, I'm like, those are the questions I had when I was asking the diversified instructors at Logan, because Logan, we had two core techniques. We had basic, Logan basic,
Hmm.
and then we had diversified. And that was our core procedures. And I think that's fine for general practice. That's
Hmm.
perfect. But I wanted more. And I was like, well, I wanted to know why my migraines got better. I want to know when to stop adjusting, because they were just like, well,
Hmm.
just hit the high side or hit the rotated side. I'm like, okay,
Right.
I get that. That's fine. But how do you know when to stop it? How do you know? And
Hmm.
they're like, you'll know. And now that I've had years on my body, I get what they're saying.
Hmm.
But when I was a student, I wanted to know like a blueprint, and
Totally.
they were just like, they're practicing docs for years. You know what I mean? They're
Hmm.
just like, look, you'll know when you know. And I'm like, okay, I got it. But so that's why, so when I got to this and with the green books and the seminars, I'm like, okay, so I was sold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainty for sure. That's
Hmm.
good. So I do know that you love the chiropractic philosophy as you've talked about, and you have a collection of really unique items. So
Yeah.
what's your favorite collectible piece that you have, and like what
Um,
significance does it have?
yeah. So yeah, it's weird. I like to, I have a bunch of the books, a bunch of the originals. I don't have a full complete set, but I have a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and like I said, eBay's been around for a long time, and
Uh-huh.
I got a lot of those collections from eBay. Um, and then man, and there's one item too. So these two things, these are my two favorite. I would say my personal favorite green books,
Hmm.
original green books. This is a Fame and Fortune. It's probably backwards,
Nice.
but
Nope,
Fame
it's
and
good.
Fortune. I love this one. And the reason why I like this one, because I think he gets into a lot of like innate thought flashes in this one, because he
Mm.
tells a lot of like stories about how like innate would start talking to him, and he would just start writing down and acting upon those thoughts.
Wow.
And yeah, so this was a cool book for that. I like that, Fame and Fortune, like innate thought classes a lot. And then this one, this one's called The Spirit of the PSC.
Oh, cool.
This is an early one, 1920.
Mm.
And I like this one because this is not written by BJ, but it is a green book,
Hmm.
and it's written. You know about this book at all?
I don't actually. I was just thinking, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Yeah. So The Spirit of the PSC, and it's written by James Leroy Nixon.
Mm.
What's cool about this book is that he it's almost like it's written as if you were a student
Mm.
going to Palmer back in like the early teens and 20s.
Wow.
It's really wild because he writes it as like a student's perspective. And so that to me when you read it, you just feel like you're there
Mm.
in Davenport, early days. And that blew my mind. I love that
That's so
one.
cool.
And then I would say a mechanical piece that I have to this day still, it's the neuromentimpograph.
Mm.
And what that um, was back in the research center. They had, when they did the neuroclimeter, right?
Hmm.
They would take a scan. So he's like, well, we need to make something that removes the variable of the speed and consistency of the scan, right?
Right.
So he developed this thing called the neuromentimpograph, to where the neurokilometer would hook up onto,
Hmm.
and it would have this like long pole, and at the bottom was basically just a motor. So
Hmm.
it had a swinging arm, so the patient would sit in the chair, the scanning chair, and the doctor would just place the neurokilometer on the skin, and then the doctor would just push the pedal, and it would go up at a constant glide.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I have the original one of those, and I
Wow.
got it from Dr. Kale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So back in school, do you remember I don't think they had the magazine, but at Life West, on the hallway where it says today's chiropractic, right? Those
Yes.
old. the old covers. So when that magazine was still being published, I don't think it is anymore, but at the back of there was like classifieds in the back of the magazine, and I would thumb through there looking for green books for sale
Hmm.
or anything. And then that I saw this thing. Yeah, that's where I saw the ad, and I called, and Dr. Kale answered the phone, and and I was like, "Yeah, do you still have this neuroinventograph?" And he goes, "Yes, I do." I was like, "Oh, I'd love to have it." So I bought it from, I don't know, for a few $100, but I still have it.
Nice. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I'd like to get it, refurbished because it does
Hmm.
work, but janky, like it's really rusted
Right.
and old. But I love like the old like metal emblems, and it's written in the font, the old BJ font and stuff.
Yes, that's
You know
so
what I'm talking
cool.
about?
Yeah,
Yes. So I have
that's
a couple of
awesome.
those old equipment. So that was my two favorite things now.
I love that. It's really cool to collect things, like authentic things like that. And just, even if you don't use them, having them is super cool. So
Well, what's
that's awesome.
interesting now is that time's going on. It's like, and I'll still look at eBay every now and then, and there's been so many reprints over the years that it's
Hmm.
hard to tell what the originals are anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, because somebody will post like a couple $100 for a book, but I know it's a reprint. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's like it's not an original, so I'm not going to pay that much for an older reprint.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say if you're thinking about starting a collection, make sure you reach out to the seller before you
Yep.
just buy a book. Make sure you get proof, especially if you want originals.
Hmm.
um because yeah, there's been a lot of, and there used to be for a long time the reprints would say reprints, but then
Hmm.
some versions or some companies wouldn't even put reprints in there, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Wow.
yeah, but these, yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to you coming out on Thursday and just chatting with the students about, I think we're going over x-rays and a couple of your cases that you've been dealing with at the office. So I'm super
Yeah,
excited for that. Just want to thank you so much for hopping on with us today.
cool. Hope it was great.
It was great. Thank you
I
so
would
much,
say,
Dr.
yeah,
Bryan.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Get your stories, get down. Start writing your stories down of
Yes.
why you're doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
I'm not important. You guys are. Your story's important.
Thank you so
Cool.
much. Yeah.
All
We'll see
right.
you
I'll see
Thursday.
you tomorrow, right?
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
All right, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and share it with all of your friends. Make sure that if you have any questions or want to interact with the video, drop your questions below. Dr. Bryan will be able to interact with you and answer some of your questions. And right here on the screen, we're going to have the QR code. So this links to our Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to scan that and follow both of those pages so that you can stay up to date on everything that's going on in club. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow afternoon for a club and then Friday at 9:20 for drills. Thank you so much and have a great day.